Good evening, everybody. It's John here from Tutor to You, here to present and host the third in our little set of revision blasts for GCSE economics. And tonight, as we have been doing for the last week or so, we're going to concentrate on microeconomics just before the exam that's coming up very, very soon. So welcome to you if you're joining us live. Let me have a look at our feed down here. We can see there's quite a few of you here joining us live. If you are, brilliant, and we would love to see your responses in the chat window, please. So we've got a series of questions and activities. We're going to throw them at you over the next 30 minutes or so, and we would love to see your responses. Now, I'm joined tonight by Peter. Good evening, Peter. How are you?
Evening, John. I'm well, thanks. Evening, everyone watching, whether it's live or on catch-up. I hope you all benefit lots from this session. As John said, lots of great activities planned to support you in the final few days before the exam.
Absolutely. And Peter mentions about watching this on replay. So anybody who is watching us on replay, anybody who's watching us having the recorded version of this, you, of course, can take your time over things a little bit more. Now, a little reminder to everybody as well who are watching these things, the PowerPoint that Peter and I are going to be using will be available for you to download pretty much as soon as this live stream is finished. It takes a few minutes or so, and then it becomes available. I think we might be ready to go, Peter. Shall we get cracking?
Yeah, let's crack on.
Okay, brilliant stuff. And we'll start with some multi-choice questions. So as I've said before, please do join in using the chat window. All I need from you to begin with these few questions is just a letter, A, B, C or D, to tell me which you think is the correct answer to the question at the top of the screen. Which of the following correctly states the rewards to land and entrepreneurship? So let's see what answers we've got here. So A, B, C or D. Laura's come straight in with D, as has Sammy. Well done, Max and Van. Let's keep going. Anybody else got some suggestions for us? They've all gone with D so far. Just wondering if anybody's got anything slightly different. Let's have a look at the correct answer. It is, of course, D. So we know that land receives rent and entrepreneurships receive profits. Really quickly in the chat window, anybody tell me what capital and labour receive? What do capital and labour receive? The answers are sort of on the screen already, but let's get them correctly identified for you. What does land and labour receive? Sorry, not capital and labour. Capital, interest and wages. Max was the first one in there. Anthony's come back with wages as well. Brilliant stuff. Okay, nice quick one to warm up with. Let's try this one. Now, read the question carefully. A little bit of a tip for you to remember that when you see a long question like the one that's on screen, make sure you read all the way through to the end. The national chain selling second-hand tech items wishes to expand its number of high street shops and can borrow money to purchase the new stores at a discounted rate. Make sure you're reading that question correctly. This is an example of what type of economy of scale. Be really careful here. The question deliberately set up to try and put one or two people off. Anthony was first in with C. Ice has come in with C as well. Van, real in brackets, has come with C as well. Let's just see if anybody spots anything different. Well done to everybody who's got that. It is indeed. It's a financial economy of scale, isn't it? So a financial economy of scale is where a business is grown large enough that they're able to get a bank loan at a cheaper rate or at a larger amount as well. Questions are very carefully written by our examiners, we know, and that aspect about discounted rate there might have been trying to put one or two people off who might have then gone with purchasing economy of scale. Nobody did so there. Well done to you guys. Hopefully that's a good sign for you that you're getting yourself properly prepared for the types of questions that are coming up on Wednesday. Let's try one more multi-choice question. Okay. Thinking about demand and a bit of supply, I guess. If there is excess demand in a market, then what is likely to be the outcome? Now, you might have to picture a demand curve, a demand and supply diagram, if you like, in your head, and try and have a think. What would be the situation, do you think, if there was excess demand? Anthony was the first to respond there by putting A. Van's coming with A as well. Laura, likewise. Grace has done likewise. Ice has gone with an A as well. Let's see whether you guys are all correct. I think you are. I think everybody who's been responding so far has gone with the correct answers. Yes, if there's excess demand, what we know is that businesses will increase their price to try and take advantage of the fact that people are prepared to pay a little bit more because there's excess demand. And of course, that's businesses are trying to maximize their profits, aren't they? Brilliant stuff. Okay. Still thinking about some of the introductory stuff with your micro side of things. Let's talk about needs and wants. A common exam question is to try and get you to think of examples of needs or wants to try and justify why something might be a need or want. What I've got here are factors that would make a good or a service a need and a factor that would make a good or a service a want. So I'm going to give you 60 seconds. I'm going to pause my talking for just 60 seconds for you to tell me which ones you think are factors that are needs and which ones are factors of wants. Let's make this easier in the chat window. Just stick with the needs. Just tell me the numbers of those items on the right hand side of the screen that are needs. 60 seconds to do that. Just the needs. That's what I'm after. Exciting music there. Thank you to everybody who's put some thoughts and some suggestions into the chat window. So we know that the economic problem is there are unlimited wants and limited resources. So economics is all about that study of how we take those scarce resources and try and distribute them as fairly or as evenly or as much as we possibly can. So what we have to do is identify those things that are needs and those things that are wants. So we identify those things that we know people have to have and those things that people can want on top of that. So in terms of the actual outcome here, there we go. The factors which make something a need is that there is a limited amount of them. People need them to live, so therefore they're necessities, and generally needs don't tend to change over time. So food, shelter, clothing, warmth, they tend to be constant, whereas our wants tend to be unlimited, and those are the things that we desire, that we don't need to live or to stay healthy, but that we want them, and they change over time. So at different times of our life, we may want slightly different things. Brilliant stuff. Well done to you guys who had a go at that one. I'll hand over to Peter for a go on the application spinner.
Thank you very much, John. So the purpose of the application spinner is to try to test your understanding, or really give you some real world examples that you can use as part of your answers. Now, we've got 6 different possible areas that we're going to look for some application for. So we'll try to take the theory away. So forget about the theory. We obviously need the theory to help us explain our answers, but the key here is to try and recall and think of some real world examples. So in a couple of seconds time, John is going to hit the magic button. Here we go. Where it stops, no one knows. Let's take a look. So can you give me a real world example of a UK firm that operates in the secondary sector? So think about what the secondary sector is. I'm going to be a little bit mean here, and I'm not going to tell you what the secondary sector is, but I will tell you that we've got primary, secondary, tertiary sectors. Apologies there, Anthony says, boo. We've got some answers coming through quickly in the chat window. Laura says mini. Isa says Uber Eats. Anthony, yeah, we are looking at manufacturers. Thank you for that, Anthony. So if you are struggling a little bit here, have a think about some manufacturers that are based in the United Kingdom, or really they've got a UK heritage that were founded in the United Kingdom. A couple more seconds, see if we can think of anything else. Or if you can just think of some UK manufacturing firms. There's a rather big car manufacturer that is based in where I am in the northeast here. Some more answers coming through. Thank you very much, folks. So we've got a theme of cars coming through here. Let's take a look at what we've come up with. Okay, so firstly, JCB, known for manufacturing diggers, and JCB's actually it's a family-owned firm. It's a limited liability company. Joseph Cyril Bamford was the name of the man that founded JCB, and Patrick Bamford that plays for Leeds United. If any of your football fans, is part of the Bamford family. So they manufacture diggers. We've got Dyson that manufacture vacuum cleaners, and Bentley that produce high-end luxury cars. Now, just to give you some context here of some research that we've done, the UK secondary sector is approximately 17% of the economy. So if we added up everything that was made in the UK, what's made in the secondary sector accounts for 17% of the total. The tertiary sector, the service sector, makes up approximately 72%. Now, during the 20th century, the UK was one of the world's biggest manufacturing countries. However, we decided to move towards specialising in the tertiary sector in the 1980s. So a bit of economic history and some context for you there. If we think about Dyson, then one of its most famous products is its bagless vacuum cleaner. But over recent years, it started to diversify and also makes hairdryers, very expensive hairdryers, fans and hand dryers. James Dyson as well once planned to make an electric car to compete with Tesla. Okay, so we've got another one coming up. Let's take a look back to our spinner. Where will it land? Okay, so this time we're testing your knowledge and understanding of the labour market. So can you give me an example of a job that would require a university degree? So we've got Isa and Max quickly in with doctor, surgeon, Van with a doctor. See if we can think of a couple more. Doctor, a lawyer or a solicitor, barrister, yeah, someone working in that aspect of the legal profession. Got possibly an IT specialist coming through, very good. A couple more seconds, see if anyone can think of any more. What's interesting, when we think about the labour supply, the need for higher level qualifications impacts upon the elasticity of supply for an industry. How responsive is supply to a change in the wage rate? Now, currently the UK is finding it quite difficult to fill up all of their doctors' posts, and we're relying on attracting qualified people from abroad. We're relying on pharmacists maybe doing some of the jobs that a GP might have done. So our inelastic supply of labour is part of the reason, why doctors, for example, receive relatively high wages. And it's also important to remember that skill levels and qualifications are two of the main causes of wage differentials, wage differences in the workplace, along with experiences. So just taking a look at the chat window again, we've had lots and lots of contributions there, which is wonderful to see. We had doctor, teacher, of course, an economist, a barrister. All of these occupations have got different, what we call entry barriers that prevent you from just immediately walking in. You need to have a university degree. I'll hand back over to John for the next activity.
Brilliant stuff. Now, I like this activity. It's basically a true-false. But what I need from you in the chat window is to give me a smiley face if you think the statements are true, and a frowny face if you think that it's false. So it's just a different way of getting you to use the chat window. Here we go. Have a look at the statement, though. The market supply for streaming services would shift to the right if more firms entered the market. Now, have a think about that. If you think I've put a question mark there, and I shouldn't have done really, because it's a statement rather than a question. The market supply for streaming services would shift to the right if more firms entered the market. Is that true? Smiley face. If it's not, a sad face. Van was the first one in. I've got a genuine smiley face. I think Laura's gone with a big smiley face. And Fionn likewise. That's nice to see. Brilliant stuff. Max likewise. Sean likewise as well. Brilliant stuff. Let's have a look. Are you all correct? Let's have a look. What have we got here? We have got a big smiley face. Well done. Well done to all of you. So what we know is if as more firms enter into a market, then the supply curve does shift to the right. It's an interesting one, isn't it? We know streaming services. Now, I should point out here, by the way, guys, we don't know what's coming up on your exam on Wednesday. So we're not able to give you any advice about what topics might be coming up. But streaming services, that's one of those topics, that could be favourable for an examiner to ask a question about, because we know the streaming services industry recently has been having a bit of a torrid time. Some people have been pulling away from it because they can't afford during the cost of living crisis. And we also know that more and more firms are joining into the markets as well. So Netflix was the big one to begin with, and now Apple TV there, and so are Amazon and a few others as well. Here's a question for you then. Even though we know we've got more companies who are actually joining in the streaming services market, why are prices not coming down then? Why are prices not coming down? If we know that more firms are entering the market, why are we not seeing prices come down? I'd just be interested to know if anybody has got any thoughts on that. It's the kind of question you might get on an exam. We can talk about the theory and our supply curve shifting, but that shift is not leading to a fall in prices as our theory and our model, our demand and supply diagram would suggest. I just wondered if anybody's got any thoughts on that one. I'm looking at the chat window now. Maybe a question a little bit too complicated for people to put loads of thoughts in. High demand from Laura? Yeah, so demand might be increasing, yes. Small firms have high costs, so they can't afford a lower price level. Certainly, if you're a streaming service and you've got to purchase the rights to a film or a documentary, then that price will be quite high. So yes, I suspect that is part of it. Monopolistic power from Johnny as well. I think there's definitely a case for that. So although we've got more firms in the marketplace at the moment, there's still not very many of them. So they still all have quite a high market power. So yeah, monopolistic power. Fion's gone with barriers to entry as well. Mikey's gone with King Demand Curve. He's bringing some A-level stuff in there. Well done. Thank you for that. Some brilliant answers to that question. Right, let's try another one. The PES, the price elasticity of supply for a farmer growing cabbages, is likely to be elastic in the short run. So in a short period of time, what do we think the elasticity of supply, don't get it confused with elasticity of demand, remember, do we think it's likely to be elastic, or is that incorrect? Should it be inelastic? So, smiley face if you think that statement is true. A frowny face if you think that it is false. Let's see what we get as a response to this one. It requires a little bit of thought, doesn't it? So, the supply of an agricultural farmer in an agricultural situation, what is their supply, their PES like? Okay, we're getting some frowny faces in now from Max, from Ellie. Laura's gone. Laura, you seem to have quite a selection of different emojis there. Thank you for that one. Van's gone with something with a tear coming down. I'm enjoying this activity. Zidius has gone with false as well. Thank you. Let's have a look at the answer. You are, of course, correct. It is inelastic. So for agricultural products, the supply tends to be quite inelastic in the short run. It's difficult for a farmer to quickly increase their output. They might have to plant more, and if they plant more cabbages, they still take a season or so for them to grow before they can sell them, and they might require more land. So it's not always easy for a farmer to increase their supply of a good. Let's have one more of these, true or false. Sticking with the price elasticity of supply calculation. If we see that a firm has an inelastic supply, it's a tough question, this one, a real tough question, so think really carefully before you respond to it. If there's an increase in demand, say for example the product becomes more fashionable, so we see a shift in our demand curve, and our product is inelastic in its supply, will we see an increase in profits? I think this is quite a tough question, this one. Have a think about it though. What do you think? If there's an increase in the demand, our demand curve shifts, and it shifts on an inelastic supply curve, is that likely to be are we like to see an increase in profits? Oh, now we are getting a few different answers. Edius is coming with true. Max is coming with true. Waiting for Laura's fantastic emojis before we reveal the answer to this one. Laura, have you got an emoji to give us for this one? It's a tough question, isn't it? Let's just wait and see if we got. I'll give you one more minute to see if we get another response to this one. Okay, Laura has come in. Thank you, Laura. Let's have a look. Generally, that is the case. That is the case. Now, it's a little bit of a trick question, and apologies. It's a tough question, this one, but deliberately trying to give you one or two of the questions tonight that are aimed at trying to get you to think a little bit more widely. The reality is, if we've got an increase in demand, say a good becomes more fashionable, on the whole, profits will tend to increase. It doesn't really make a big difference in terms of the elasticity of supply. However, the impact of that change is likely to be greater for a good that has supply inelastic. So if we have an inelastic supply, apologies, I've got a rogue S2 on my diagram there. I'll get rid of that. Generally what we see is a bigger increase in price and a bigger increase in profits for firms. So there's something perhaps for you to be aware of and have a look at that one. What difference does supply elasticity make to potential profits? Brilliant stuff. Okay, over to Peter for the next activity.
Well, thanks, John. So we've got some quantitative skills being tested here in terms of your cost and revenue calculations. And as you know, 10% of the marks across the GCSE papers are from quantitative skills. So we've got a table, and what we'd like you to do, we've got A, B, C, and D that are missing. So in the chat window, So we've got total variable cost, total cost, average cost, and average revenue, where we've got our missing spaces. In the chat, we'd like you to work these out. And if you just put A equals B equals C equals, etc., that would be most wonderful. We're going to give you 60 seconds, starting from now. If we want to get one or two, again, don't worry. Let's just see what the logic behind these calculations is. Okay, thank you very much, folks. Got a few responses popped up in the chat window there. That's wonderful to see. 60 seconds isn't an awful lot of time to digest all that information. So if you're still working and calculating, don't worry too much. Yeah, it is epic music. Thanks for that. Van, I think, was the first there to contribute. I think even just before I'd finished talking, which was wonderful to see. Then we've got Nikita and Laura with some responses as well. Okay, let's take a look at the answers. I think those three respondents should be pretty pleased with their efforts. Well done. Let's talk us through, I'll talk you through how we get them, nice and straightforward. So A comes from 2 units of output. We're looking for the total variable cost at 2 units of output. We know that at 1 unit, total variable cost is 15, so that must be our variable cost per unit. So we're going to multiply 2 by 15 to get 30. B is taking our total fixed cost of 70 and adding it to 60, that gets us our 130. Average cost is total cost divided by quantity. So at output level 5, we've got 145 divided by 5, that gets us 29. Average revenue, it's D, 180. Well, we're looking for total revenue, that's 240 divided by an output of 3. Okay, so very well done, folks. Now, what's important to just have a little bit of a think about here is that calculations are very common in exams, and so are calculations like these. That, in essence, just they test our logic of being able to decipher what comes from where. What you need to be very clear about is the difference between fixed and variable costs. Remember, fixed costs do not change with output. Change with output is what's key. So being able and being confident in terms of explaining the process of what fixed cost is, identifying a fixed cost on a table such as that, okay, and then thinking about how variable costs behave is important. So if we just look at that table, we don't have a column for fixed costs anywhere, but we know that total costs at an output level of 0 or 70, so fixed costs must be 70. Okay, so be really careful too with calculating averages. Looking at some examiners' reports, that's been highlighted as a common numerical error by GCSE economics students. It's always the taking our total and dividing it by the quantity at a given level of output to get our average, whether it be revenue or cost.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Peter. Okay, 2 very quick bubble quiz questions. If you've not seen one of these revision blasts before, a bubble quiz question is like a multi-choice question, but this time any number of the answers could be correct. 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. So what I need from you is the letter or letters of those answers that you think are correct, and none are correct if writing none are correct if none of them are correct. Here we go. Have a look at this one to begin with. Which of these are advantages of division of labour? So have a look at those 4 possible answers. So in the chat window, can you give me the letter or letters of those that you think are correct? Put none are correct if you think none of them are correct. Let's have a look, see what we get here. So division of labour, as we know, is this idea, this ability for a firm to start to get its workers to work on individual tasks, on smaller tasks, but doing them more regularly, more repetitively. We're getting a lot of responses coming in. Laura's come in first again. Well done, Laura. With C&D has as Van, as has BotLol. That's a first response from BotLol. Thank you for that. With C&D, any others? Any more? Let's have a look at the answer for this one. All those people who responded were spot on. An individual worker becomes more competent if you do something regularly. You'll know this with your exam practice, won't you? The more regularly you do something, the better you get at it. Increases productivity per worker as well. So as well as being better at it, the output is greater. So again, practicing your exam questions means that you'll do them more speedily. The other two, of course, are some of the disadvantages of division of labour. So we know that people become more bored when they're doing a task repetitively, and therefore a firm is more likely to see a higher level of staff turnover. And one of the other problems we've got is as businesses growing and start to globalise and become global firms, we're starting to see less and less choice and more standardised products. So our choices are beginning to deteriorate as firms specialise more and more. Let's try one more of these then. Which of these will influence the value of price elasticity of demand? I make no apologies for how many questions we've asked tonight about elasticity, whether that's demand elasticity or supply elasticity. We know it's the topic that so many students struggle with in the micro papers. So it's the one for you to really make sure that you are fully au fait with. Okay, so which of these influence the value of the price elasticity of demand? BotLol has come back with BCD. Now, BotLol's got involved and they've come back with 3 different ones there. Van has gone the same, slightly different order of his responses. Any more? Nikita, BCD as well. Any more for any more? I think we're getting there pretty much, aren't we? Sharani, sorry. Sharani has gone with the same. Let's have a look. You are all right, of course. Degree of habit. So we know, for example, that the products which have a high degree of habit, cigarettes is the common example, isn't it? That if we have those people who are unfortunately addicted to smoking cigarettes, that are more likely to continue to pay for those cigarettes as they go up in price. Proportion of income spent on a good, the smaller the proportion of your income, the more inelastic the demand for a good might be. And the more substitutes we have for a good, the more elastic the demand for a product tends to be. Degree of capacity available at a factory is relating, of course, to the supply elasticity of a product. Brilliant stuff. Well done. One final task. Over to Peter.
Okay, so this activity is called news headlines. So we're going to give you a news headline and it's got some missing words in it. They're all topical. They're things that have appeared in the news over the last couple of months or so. So let's take a look at our first example. The UK government takes over blank rail operator after nearly 25% of trains were cancelled in 1 month. Anyone got any clue whatsoever as to the rail operator in question? If you do, it would be lovely to see some ideas in the chat window. I'll give you a clue. This operator, I've been on many a train by this one, and more times than not, the destination I've been going to has been Manchester. And as John's just said in the chat here, lots of real life examples to support our application. A couple more seconds to see if you can think of any. Perhaps you're furiously Googling. Got a contribution there from Sharani. Should we take a look at the answer, John? It's the Trans-Pennine Express rail operator. Now, if we just mouse click over the next slide, we've got a typical exam style question here. Explain why a lack of competition may have contributed to the poor record of the Trans-Pennine Express railway operator. So lots of services being cancelled. Anyone got any ideas whatsoever as to how a lack of competition might have contributed to that poor record? Any ideas whatsoever? It would be wonderful to see them in the chat. Just 1 or 2 word answers. Maybe thinking about incentives, one of those key economic words. Thanks, Van. So no real incentive to innovate. So maybe the rolling stock or maybe the trains were at times in need of repair, or maybe they needed upgrading. Possibly that wasn't done quick enough in some circumstances. Thank you very much for that. That's a really valid idea. No motivation for improvement, as there's got no fear to lose their customers, from Nikita. That's a nice logical link that you've developed there in terms of that reason, if we're thinking about these skills of analysis. Let's take a look at what we came up with. I'm just a little bit conscious of time here. So you guys are we're definitely heading down the right track, so they say. So with little competition, there was less incentive for TransPine Express to improve the quality of their operations. The company may have reduced costs in order to maximise their profits. And this led to a lack of investment in staff and in the rolling stock, i.e. the trains themselves. In turn, this may have meant there were insufficient staff to cover illnesses and a greater likelihood that trains break down more regularly. Okay, strong efforts there. Let's look at one last one. Okay, the UK has banned who from buying out computer game maker Activision Blizzard. So there was a company, big company. Max was in there straight away with Microsoft, followed by Laura. Great to see we've been paying attention to the news. Let's just confirm. Indeed it was. One last activity then. Let's take a look at how this might look if it was an exam style question. Explain why regulators in the UK may prevent Xbox owners Microsoft from buying out a computer game developer like Activision Blizzard. So what's the link? Why might the UK competition regulators have said, no, you can't proceed with this takeover? Why might that have been? So Max has popped up with monopoly, this idea of monopoly power. And therefore leading to maybe the ability for Microsoft to raise prices not only of the games but also of consoles such as the Xbox One. I think the Xbox One's the most latest console. I'm not 100% sure. No doubt someone will correct me. It'd be wonderful if you could keep me in the loop. It might reduce competition and consumer welfare. That's very insightful. Yeah, I think you're definitely onto something there, Sharani. Well done. Let's take a look at what we came up with. So by buying out companies like Activision Blizzard, Microsoft will have had greater domination in the gaming console market. They may be able to prevent competitors such as Sony's PlayStation. Nice use of context there. Access to some games and therefore give themselves an advantage in the market. In turn, this may lead to Microsoft being able to charge higher prices to consumers. Okay, so there's our chain of analysis that explains that rationale and that reasoning. So, hope you found that useful.
Brilliant stuff. Thanks, Peter. And I guess the theme of tonight's revision blast has been very much about those real world examples, hasn't it? Not that you necessarily need to take in loads of examples yourself when you're in the exams. Look out for them as part of any kind of case study. Drawing in some real examples really does try and show the examiners that you can apply that theory that you've learned very much to the real world, because that's what economics is in the end, isn't it? It's a real world subject. Brilliant stuff. Massive thank you to Peter for tonight as well. Always great to see. I didn't know that thing about Patrick Bamford, by the way. That was a bit of news to me. Big thank you to those who contributed as well on the chat window. I'll get a few names out. Anthony, Laura, Isa, Max, Van, Sammy, Fionn, Nikita, Mikey, Sharani, apologies again, Ely, Zedius, Bot, Lol, Apologies if I've missed your name out. Always love to see the responses that students give us on these revision blasts. If you found tonight useful, please do give us a thumbs up in YouTube. That helps get our message out there to a wider audience. A quick reminder that the PowerPoint that Peter and I have been using will be available to download very soon, very much as a few minutes after we've finished this live stream. And of course, you've got your exam in just a few days' time. So from Peter and myself, everybody at Tutor to You, the very best of luck. I'm sure you're going to do very, very well. Goodbye, everybody.
Good luck. Goodbye.